Hey everyone, it's Emma here, and oh my goodness, you are not going to believe what I did yesterday. I had one of those completely unplanned, wonderfully spontaneous days, and I just have to share it with you. So, picture this. It was a rainy Sunday, the kind where curling up on the sofa feels like the only right thing to do. And that's exactly what I did. I grabbed a blanket, made myself a giant mug of hot chocolate, and decided to just relax. But then, I stumbled across some old comedy videos online, and honestly, it felt like magic. I completely lost track of time, just binge watching these hilarious clips. I was laughing so hard, tears were streaming down my face, my stomach hurt, and I think I even woke up the cat a couple of times. It was the perfect antidote to a gloomy day, a burst of pure joy and laughter. And you know what? It made me realize how important it is to take those moments for yourself, to just let go and enjoy something silly. It was such a simple thing, but it completely lifted my spirits. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. I release new videos daily, focusing on English speaking and listening skills, so I hope you'll join me and have some fun while we learn. A gentle sigh, followed by the clinking of a teacup. So, you want to hear about the day I learned to play the trumpet? Oh, honey, it's a story. A real story. It's funny now, looking back, but at the time, well, it was a whole roller coaster of emotions. You know what I mean? That mix of excitement, terror, and the sheer, bone-deep conviction that I was about to embark on something monumental. It all started with Mr. Henderson, our band director. He had this presence, like a benevolent, slightly balding, musical Gandalf. He stood on the stage of the school auditorium, holding up this gleaming brass instrument, the light catching it just so. It looked magical, like a key to some hidden world. I was mesmerized. 10 years old, all gangly limbs and misplaced enthusiasm, and I was utterly convinced that the trumpet was my destiny. The smell of the auditorium, that's something I'll never forget. Dust, old wood, and this faint, metallic scent that I later learned was the residue of 1,000 breathy notes echoing through the years. The air was thick with anticipation. All these kids, buzzing with nervous energy, waiting to choose their instruments. Clarinets, flutes, trombones, they all seemed ordinary. My heart was set on the trumpet. It had this call, you know? This powerful, shimmering voice just waiting to be unleashed. My parents, bless their hearts, were supportive, although I think they secretly hoped I'd choose something a little less loud. My dad, especially, had this pained look in his eyes when Mr. Henderson handed me my very own, dented, slightly tarnished trumpet. It came with a little blue case, and inside, nestled in faded velvet, was this mouthpiece. It looked so small, so insignificant. How could such a small piece of metal produce such a grand sound? That night, I sat in my room, the trumpet case open before me like a treasure chest. I picked up the instrument, its cool brass a shock against my skin. It felt heavy, substantial. I brought the mouthpiece to my lips. Now, I'd seen people play the trumpet on TV. I'd heard it in parades. I figured, you know, how hard could it be? A chuckle, a shake of the head. Oh, honey, I was so naive. My first attempt sounded less like a majestic fanfare and more like a dying elephant. A strangled, wheezy honk. My lips buzzed uncontrollably, and I felt this strange vibration in my teeth. I tried again. Same result. And again. And again. Each attempt was a new variation on the theme of dying elephant. My cheeks ached, my lips felt numb, and my dog, bless his furry little heart, started howling in sympathy, or maybe protest. I don't know. The first few weeks were a journey. A long, arduous, frequently embarrassing journey. Every practice session was a symphony of squawks and splutters. My family, trapped within the confines of our small house, endured my musical explorations with varying degrees of patience. My mom, she tried to be encouraging. "That's nice, dear," she'd say, with a strained smile, while subtly closing the kitchen door. My dad, he was less diplomatic. "Are you trying to summon aliens?" he'd yell from the living room. "Because if so, tell them to bring earplugs." But I persisted. I practiced every day, diligently following Mr. Henderson's instructions, wrestling with those 3 valves, trying to coax something resembling a note out of that stubborn brass tube. There were moments of pure frustration, moments when I wanted to throw the trumpet across the room and never look at it again. Moments when I questioned my sanity, my talent, my very existence. Why, oh why, had I chosen the trumpet? Why not the flute? Flutes seemed so peaceful. Then, one day, it happened. I was practicing in my room, the curtains drawn, lost in my own little world of squeaks and groans. I took a deep breath, placed the mouthpiece on my lips, and blew. And a clear, pure note rang out. Not a dying elephant. Not a strangled honk. A real, honest-to-goodness note. I froze. Did I do that? I tried again. Another note. And another. I felt this rush. This surge of pure joy. I had done it. I had wrestled the beast and emerged victorious. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. But it was a start. A tiny, shimmering spark in the vast darkness of my musical ineptitude. I ran downstairs, trumpet in hand, bursting with excitement. "Mom, Dad, listen." I played my 3 hard-won notes, proud as a peacock. My mom clapped, genuine this time. My dad, well, he grinned. A real, honest-to-goodness grin. "Not bad, kid," he said. "Not bad. At all." From that day on, everything changed. The trumpet became my voice. My way of expressing all the things I couldn't put into words. The joy, the frustration, the dreams, the fears. It was a challenge, yes, but it was my challenge. And I loved it. I wasn't a natural, mind you. I had to work at it. Practice, practice, practice. Scales, arpeggios, long tones. My lips bled, my cheeks ached. My neighbors probably considered filing a noise complaint. But slowly, gradually, I got better. The squawks became less frequent, the notes more consistent. I learned to play melodies, simple tunes, then more complex pieces. I joined the school band, then the jazz band. I even started composing my own music. The trumpet became my companion, my confidant. It went with me everywhere. To school, to band practice, to summer camp. It was there during the triumphs, the solos, the standing ovations. And it was there during the disappointments, the missed notes, the times when I wanted to give up. But I never did give up. Because the trumpet, you see, it wasn't just an instrument. It was a part of me. It was a reminder of that 10-year-old girl, standing in the school auditorium, mesmerized by the gleam of brass, the promise of music. It was a reminder of the power of perseverance, the magic of sound, the joy of creation. And that, my friend, is the story of the day I learned to play the trumpet. A warm smile, another clink of the teacup. So, what do you think? Not too bad for a dying elephant, huh? Okay. So, you are never going to believe what happened to me last Tuesday. It all started with this recipe. This infamous recipe. See, I'd been eyeing it for weeks. It was for this, wait for it. Moroccan tagine with apricots and almonds. Doesn't it sound divine? Just the name itself conjures up images of bustling marketplaces, exotic spices, and, well, culinary triumph. Little did I know, I'd found it tucked away in this old, stained cookbook my grandmother had given me. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but the recipes? Pure gold. Or so I thought. This particular recipe had a little dried apricot stuck to the page, right next to the ingredient list. A sign? Maybe. A warning? Definitely. Anyway, Tuesday was the day. I had the afternoon free, the sun was streaming through the kitchen window, and I felt inspired. You know those days when you just know something magical is about to happen? That was me. Dusted off the apron, put on some jazzy music, a little Ella Fitzgerald, because why not? And I was ready to conquer the culinary world. One tagine at a time. First hurdle. The spice market. Now, I love a good spice market. The colors. The smells. It's like sensory overload in the best possible way. But finding everything on this ancient list? That was an adventure. I swear I spent a good hour sniffing little jars, trying to decipher handwritten labels, and politely declining samples of things I couldn't even pronounce. Saffron, cumin, coriander, ginger, turmeric. It was like a treasure hunt. And let me tell you, saffron is not cheap. My wallet wept a little, but hey, culinary masterpieces don't come cheap, right? Back in my kitchen, the real fun began. Chopping onions. Why do onions always make me cry? It's a conspiracy, I tell you. Mincing garlic. My fingers smelled like garlic for days. Not necessarily a bad thing. And then, the apricots. Plump, juicy, sunshine-colored apricots. I almost ate 1, or 5. But I resisted. I had a tagine to build. Now, here's where things started to go a little sideways. The recipe called for preserved lemons. Preserved lemons? I'd never even heard of preserved lemons. A quick Google search later. Thank goodness for the internet. I discovered that preserved lemons are not, in fact, lemons that have been preserved in a jar like pickles. No, they're lemons that have been fermented in salt for weeks. Yeah. Did I have preserved lemons? Obviously not. Did I panic? Momentarily. Then I remembered something my grandmother always said. When life gives you lemons, use regular lemons and a pinch of salt. Wise woman, my grandmother. So, that's what I did. Improvisation, my friend. It's the spice of life. Or, in this case, the citrus. The next step involved browning the chicken. Easy peasy, right? Wrong. My pan was too hot. The chicken stuck. The smoke alarm went off. My cat, who's usually a pretty chill dude, bolted from the room as if the kitchen had spontaneously combusted. It was chaotic. But, you know, I salvaged it. Scraped off the burnt bits, added a little more oil, and eventually, the chicken browned. Not beautifully, mind you. More like a rustic brown. Like it had spent a weekend camping. Then came the spices. I added them to the pot, the fragrant clouds rising up to meet me. It smelled amazing. Earthy, warm, exotic. I felt like a culinary goddess. This was it. This was my moment. Guess what happened next? I sneezed. And not just a little, achoo. No. A full body, earth-shattering, volcanic eruption of a sneeze. The kind that makes your eyes water and your knees buckle. And, in my moment of sneezing weakness, I dropped the jar of saffron into the tagine. The entire jar. Remember how I said saffron was expensive? Yeah. My culinary masterpiece was now also a very expensive mistake. I stared at the pot, a mixture of horror and disbelief swirling within me. The vibrant orange of the saffron had leached into the sauce, turning it a disconcerting shade of fluorescent orange. It looked like something you'd find in a nuclear waste facility, not on a dinner plate. What did I do? I laughed. I mean, what else could I do? It was either laugh or cry, and frankly, I'd already cried enough over the onions. So, I fished out the empty saffron jar, took a deep breath, and tasted it. And you know what? It wasn't terrible. Overpowering, yes. A bit like licking a sunbeam, sure. But not terrible. I added a little more liquid, a touch more salt, and let it simmer. The fluorescent orange mellowed to a more palatable golden hue. The aroma, though intensely saffron-y, was still enticing. An hour later, with trepidation and a healthy dose of skepticism, I served it up. My husband, bless his heart, tried to look enthusiastic. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and then smiled. Wow, he said, this is different. Different. Yes, it was definitely different. It wasn't the elegant, subtly spiced tagine I'd envisioned. It was intense, bold, a little crazy. Like me, after a day in the kitchen battling rogue spices and exploding sneezes. We ate it anyway. We ate it all. And you know what? It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was memorable. So, that was my Tuesday. The day I tried a new recipe. The day I learned that sometimes, the biggest culinary disasters can lead to the most interesting meals. And the day I learned that even when you sneeze your way through a recipe, and accidentally add an entire jar of saffron to your tagine, it can still be an adventure. You know what I mean? It's all part of the fun. The messy, chaotic, hilarious fun of cooking. And life, really. So, next time you're in the kitchen, feeling ambitious, remember my story. And maybe, just maybe, keep a tissue handy. You never know when the saffron might strike. Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But you know what? Confidence comes when you do what scares you. Think about it. Every time you push yourself to speak, even if it feels shaky at first, you're building that incredible muscle of courage. And with each word, each sentence, you're conquering that mountain bit by bit. It's truly amazing how much you grow when you embrace the challenge. Here's a simple trick I've found super helpful. Debating both sides of an issue, all by yourself. Imagine you're making dinner, chopping those veggies, and you start a little debate in your head. Should pineapple belong on pizza? You argue for it, then against it, all in English. It's fun, easy to fit into your day, and it really gets you thinking and speaking without the pressure of an audience. Honestly, it felt like magic when I first tried it. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? I totally get it. Something I've struggled with is trying to mimic accents and failing. It can be so frustrating when the sounds just won't come out the way you hear them in movies or songs. You practice and practice, but sometimes it still feels like you're miles away. It's all part of the journey though, and remember, your own unique voice is what matters most. You will not believe what happened next. The other day, I overheard someone using the proverb, "All that glitters is not gold," and it got me thinking. It's so concise yet so profound. And you know what? It sparked a whole conversation. It makes me wonder, what's your favorite English proverb or saying? I'd love to hear the ones that resonate with you. Share them in the comments. Let's learn from each other. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you get this itch. This itch to do something different. Something you've never done before, or haven't done in ages? Well, that itch, for me, recently manifested itself as an overwhelming desire to make pasta. Homemade pasta. From scratch. Now, I'm not a chef. Not even close. I can follow a recipe, sure, but my usual culinary adventures involve things like, toast. Maybe a fried egg if I'm feeling adventurous. So, homemade pasta? It felt ambitious, almost audacious. But the itch was there, and I had to scratch it. It all started with a YouTube video. I stumbled across this Italian nonna, her hands, wrinkled and wise, kneading dough like it was an extension of her own soul. The rhythmic push and pull, the flour dusting the air like a gentle snowfall, it was mesmerizing. And the pasta she produced. Silky smooth, glistening, it looked like edible sunshine. I was hooked. I had to try. So, off I went to the grocery store. Now, I'd imagined this romantic scene of me handpicking organic, locally milled flour, the kind that comes in burlap sacks. The reality? Staring blankly at a wall of flour, utterly bewildered. All-purpose? Bread flour? OO flour? What even was OO flour? It sounded like a secret agent. I felt like I needed a degree in flourology. Eventually, after much deliberation and some frantic Googling in the aisle, don't judge, I grabbed a bag of OO flour. Feeling incredibly sophisticated, might I add, and some eggs. Just eggs. Because, apparently, that's all you need. Flour and eggs. Simple, right? Ha. Famous last words. Back home, I cleared my kitchen counter, which, let me tell you, is a feat in itself. My kitchen counter is usually a repository for everything but cooking. Mail, keys, random bits of paper, the occasional rogue sock. But this pasta-making endeavor, this was serious business. It deserved a clean counter. I poured the flour onto my counter, making a little well in the center, like the nonna in the video. Cracked the eggs into the well. And then, the mess began. My initial gentle nudging of the flour into the eggs quickly devolved into a chaotic floury explosion. Flour everywhere. On the counter, on the floor, in my hair. I looked like a ghost baker. It was less graceful than I'd envisioned. But I persevered. I kneaded, and I kneaded, and I kneaded. My arms started to ache. The dough, at first a sticky, shaggy mess, slowly, miraculously, started to come together. It became smooth, elastic, almost alive. It felt amazing. Like I was creating something, you know? Something real, something tangible, from just two simple ingredients. Then came the resting period. Wrapped in cling film, my little dough ball sat on the counter, looking all innocent and unassuming. I used this time to clean up the floury aftermath of my kneading frenzy. Let's just say my kitchen looked like a blizzard had blown through. After the dough had its little nap, it was time for the rolling. Now, I don't own a pasta machine. Not yet, anyway. This was old school, rolling pin territory. I rolled, and I rolled, and I rolled. The dough fought back. It shrunk back. It stuck to the rolling pin. It was a battle of wills. But, slowly, surely, it started to yield. It thinned out, stretched, becoming this beautiful, wide sheet of pasta. It wasn't perfect, mind you. It was a bit uneven, a bit rustic. But it was mine. Then came the cutting. I folded the dough over and over, then, with a sharp knife, sliced it into thin strips. Fettuccine, I decided. Why? No idea. It just felt right. Unfurling the ribbons of pasta, I felt a surge of pride. It wasn't perfect, not like the nonas, but it was real. It was homemade. Boiling the pasta was the easiest part. A quick dip in salted, boiling water, and it was done. Just a couple of minutes. It floated to the surface, delicate and tender. I scooped it out, drained it, and tossed it with a simple sauce I'd whipped up. Garlic, olive oil, a pinch of red pepper flakes. And then, the moment of truth. I twirled a forkful of pasta, took a bite, and it was incredible. Seriously. It was soft, yet with a satisfying bite. It tasted fresh, clean, like sunshine and hard work. It was the best pasta I'd ever had. Not because it was objectively the best pasta, but because I'd made it. With my own two hands. From scratch. It wasn't just about the pasta, you know? It was about the process. The mess, the frustration, the triumph. It was about connecting with something ancient, something primal. It was about slowing down, taking the time to create something with my own hands. In a world of instant gratification, it was a reminder that sometimes, the most rewarding things are the ones that take time, effort, and a whole lot of flour. Guess what happened next? I ate the entire bowl. Every last strand. And then, guess what? I made another batch the next day. And the day after that. I'm officially hooked. My kitchen is permanently dusted with flour. My arms are perpetually sore, but I don't care. Because I've discovered the joy of homemade pasta. And that, my friend, is a joy worth sharing. So, next time you feel that itch to do something different, something challenging, make pasta. You won't regret it. Just, maybe, invest in a good apron. And a broom. You'll thank me later. Okay. So, you know how sometimes the smallest things can turn into a whole adventure? Well, let me tell you about the time I bought a new phone cover. It sounds mundane, right? Trust me, it wasn't. It all started because my old one, well, it had seen better days. Remember those clear jelly cases everyone had a few years ago? Yeah, that was mine. It was once this pristine, crystal clear thing, showcasing the beautiful rose gold of my phone. But time, oh time, is a cruel mistress. It had yellowed, like an old newspaper left out in the sun. It had scratches that looked like a tiny kitten had used it as a scratching post. And don't even get me started on the corner that was, well, let's just say it had become a casualty of gravity one too many times. It was clinging on for dear life, practically begging for retirement. So, I knew I needed a new one. But you know me, I'm not one for impulsive purchases. Especially when it comes to something I use every single day. My phone is practically an extension of my hand. So, I decided to make a day of it. A phone cover shopping spree. I pictured myself strolling through little boutiques, sipping iced lattes, finding the perfect cover. The reality? Slightly less glamorous. It was a Saturday, which meant the mall was, well, let's just say it was buzzing with the energy of 1,000 toddlers hopped up on sugar. The air conditioning was battling bravely against the throngs of people, but it was losing. The faint scent of cinnamon buns from the food court mingled with the slightly sterile smell of department store perfume. Sensory overload, basically. First stop, the phone accessory kiosk in the middle of the mall. You know the ones, brightly lit, crammed with every kind of cover imaginable, from sparkly unicorns to rugged, outdoorsy ones. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I browsed, picked up a few, felt the textures. Silicone, plastic, leather, so many choices. There were floral prints, geometric designs, even ones that lit up. I almost went for a cute, minimalist one with tiny daisies, but then I remembered I'd just bought a new floral dress. Too matchy-matchy? Maybe. I moved on. Next, the big electronics store. They had a whole wall dedicated to phone accessories. It was like a phone cover museum. I spent a good half hour there, opening and closing little boxes, trying to envision each cover on my phone. I even asked a sales assistant for his opinion, but he just shrugged and pointed me towards the most popular section. Helpful, right? I sighed. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Everything was either too bulky, too glittery, or just not me. By this point, I was starting to feel a little defeated. My feet were aching, my head was spinning, and the cinnamon bun smell was starting to make me nauseous. Maybe I should just give up and order one online? But then, as I was about to throw in the towel, I spotted it. Tucked away in a corner, on a small, almost hidden display, was a phone cover unlike any I'd seen before. It was a deep, rich teal, the color of the ocean on a calm summer day. It had a subtle, woven texture that felt incredibly smooth and luxurious against my fingers. And the best part? It had a tiny, delicate silver charm attached, a little hummingbird. My heart skipped a beat. Hummingbirds are my favorite. They're so tiny and vibrant, full of life and energy. It felt like a sign. I picked it up, almost reverently. It fit perfectly in my hand, snug and secure. I held it up to my phone, imagining it there, protecting it, adding a touch of personality. It wasn't just a phone cover, it was a statement. A tiny piece of art. And then, I saw the price tag. Gulp. It was definitely a splurge. Way more than I'd planned on spending. I hesitated. Did I really need a phone cover that cost this much? Could I justify it? I stood there for a good 5 minutes, debating with myself. My inner bargain hunter was screaming, but my inner magpie, drawn to all things shiny and beautiful, was whispering sweet nothings in my ear. Finally, I took a deep breath and made a decision. Treat yourself, I muttered under my breath, and walked towards the checkout. The cashier, a young woman with bright pink hair, smiled. "That's a beautiful cover," she said. "Hummingbirds are my favorite too." See? A sign. It was meant to be. Walking out of the mall, phone safely nestled in its new, beautiful home, I felt a ridiculous sense of satisfaction. It was just a phone cover, yes, but it was more than that. It was a reminder to appreciate the little things, to find joy in the unexpected, and to sometimes, just sometimes, treat yourself. Plus, it protected my phone from any more gravity-induced mishaps, which is always a bonus, right? So, yeah, buying a new phone cover. It might sound like a boring errand, but sometimes, it can be a whole adventure in itself. You just never know what little treasures you might find along the way. And hey, who knows what story my next phone cover will bring? Maybe it'll involve a runaway shopping cart, a celebrity encounter, or a spontaneous trip to, well, let's just say I'm open to possibilities. You know what I mean? Learning a new language, especially English, can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But you know what? Your mistakes are proof you're trying. Think of it this way: each stumble, each slightly incorrect word, each hesitant pause, it's all evidence that you are actively pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone and making progress. Embrace those moments. They are stepping stones, not roadblocks. You are growing, one word at a time, and that's incredible. And hey, I have a fun little practice idea you might like. Have you tried speaking in front of a selfie camera? Seriously, it's more helpful than you think. Picture this. You're cooking dinner, and you just start chatting to the camera about your day, in English. It's a judgment-free zone where you can experiment with new words and phrases without feeling self-conscious. Plus, you can watch it back and see how far you've come. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? Something I often struggle with is not knowing when to interrupt politely. It's like this inner battle between wanting to contribute and worrying about stepping on someone's toes. It's such a delicate dance, and it takes practice to get the hang of it. But the more we speak, the more natural it becomes. You will not believe what happened next. I was recently at a coffee shop, eavesdropping, I confess, and I heard a group of people speaking English with all different accents. It was a beautiful mix of sounds and rhythms. And you know what? It reminded me of how diverse and connected our world is. Have you ever traveled to a place where English is spoken? I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments. Sharing our stories can be so inspiring, don't you think? Okay. So, you know how sometimes you just crave comfort food? Like, deep down in your soul, you need something warm and familiar and just good? Well, the other day, I was hit by one of those cravings. And you know what popped into my head? Vegetable pulao. My grandma's recipe. Now, my grandma, she was a magician in the kitchen. Seriously, she could whip up a feast out of practically nothing. And her pulao? Oh, it was legendary. Fluffy, fragrant rice, studded with colorful veggies, each grain infused with this delicate, almost magical blend of spices. Just thinking about it makes my mouth water. So, anyway, I decided I had to make it. It had been ages, and I was feeling nostalgic, I guess. Plus, it was a dreary, rainy day, the perfect pulao weather, you know? I pulled out her old, handwritten recipe card. The edges were frayed, stained with turmeric and who knows what else. The ink faded in places. Just holding it in my hand brought back a flood of memories. The clatter of pots and pans in her tiny kitchen, the warm, spicy aroma that would fill the entire house. Her humming softly as she stirred the pot with this ancient wooden spoon. Okay, getting a bit sentimental here, but you get the picture. Right. So, the recipe. It's deceptively simple, you know? Rice, veggies, spices, water. But the magic, the real art, lies in the details. And that's where I sometimes struggle. My grandma never measured anything. A pinch of this, a dash of that. It was all instinct, intuition, years of experience. Me? I'm more of a follow the instructions to the letter kind of cook. So, I gathered my ingredients. Basmati rice, of course. Had to be the good stuff. Then, a rainbow of veggies. Carrots, peas, potatoes, green beans, cauliflower. All chopped with slightly more enthusiasm than precision, I'll admit. My knife skills are a work in progress. And then, the spices. This is where things got serious. My grandma's spice cabinet was a treasure trove. Tiny jars filled with fragrant powders and whole spices, each with its own distinct aroma. I remember, as a kid, I'd sneak in there and just inhale, mesmerized by the sheer variety. My own spice collection is less impressive. Let's just say it involves a lot of pre-ground supermarket blends. I rummaged through my drawers, pulling out jars of cumin, coriander, turmeric, garam masala, chili powder. I even found a tiny, almost empty jar of cardamom pods, a relic from a previous attempt at Indian cooking. Score. Okay. So, the rice. My grandma always rinsed it until the water ran clear, a process that felt strangely meditative. As I stood there, swirling the rice in the colander under the running tap, I could almost hear her voice. Wash it. Well, beta. Get rid of all the starch. Beta, by the way, is Hindi for child. She called everyone beta. Then, the veggies. Sautéed in ghee, of course. The rich, nutty aroma filled my kitchen, already hinting at the deliciousness to come. I added the spices, one by one, watching as they bloomed and released their fragrant oils. A cloud of warm, spicy steam rose up, enveloping me in a comforting embrace. Now, for the rice. This is the tricky part. Too much water, and you end up with mush. Too little, and it's crunchy. Not a good look for pulao. I consulted the recipe card, squinting at the faded writing. 2 cups of water for every cup of rice. Seemed straightforward enough. But then, I remembered something my grandma used to say. Cooking is not just about following the recipe, beta. It's about feeling it. What did she mean by that? I'd always assumed it was some kind of mystical, grandma wisdom thing. But now, standing there, stirring the pot, I started to understand. It was about paying attention to the subtle cues. The sizzle of the spices, the steam rising from the rice, the way the mixture felt against the spoon. It was about trusting your instincts, even if you weren't quite sure what you were doing. So, I added a little extra water. Just a splash. Call it a hunch. I covered the pot, lowered the heat, and waited. The next 20 minutes were agonizing. I paced around my kitchen, checking the pot every few minutes, lifting the lid just a crack to peek inside, inhaling the fragrant steam. Was it burning? Was it sticking? Was it perfect? Finally, the timer went off. I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. And, oh, my goodness. It was glorious. Fluffy, fragrant rice, perfectly cooked, studded with colorful veggies. The aroma was intoxicating. It looked just like my grandma's. I scooped out a generous serving, grabbed the fork, and took a bite. And it was like being transported back in time. The familiar flavors, the comforting warmth, the subtle blend of spices, it was all there. It wasn't exactly like my grandma's, of course. But it was close. Really close. And you know what? It wasn't just the pulao itself. It was the whole experience. The ritual of following her recipe, the memories it evoked, the connection to my past. It was all part of the magic. So, yeah, that's my vegetable pulao story. It might sound like a simple thing, making a pot of rice. But sometimes, the simplest things are the most meaningful, you know? They connect us to our loved ones, to our heritage, to ourselves. And that, my friend, is worth more than any fancy restaurant meal. So, next time you're craving comfort food, give it a try. You might just surprise yourself. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a little bit of magic in your own kitchen. Now, tell me, what's your go-to comfort food? I'm always looking for new ideas. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just get inspired? Like a random Tuesday afternoon, sunlight streaming through the window, and suddenly you have to learn how to make homemade jam. That was me last summer. I don't even particularly love jam, which makes the whole thing even funnier in hindsight. It all started with these ridiculously plump, juicy peaches. I mean, picture this. I'm at the farmer's market, surrounded by the buzz of people chatting, the smell of fresh herbs and sun-warmed tomatoes. And there they were. These peaches, practically glowing with an inner light, piled high in a woven basket. They smelled, oh my goodness, they smelled like sunshine and summer itself. I just had to buy them. Like a whole bag full. And then, panic. What was I going to do with all these peaches? I couldn't possibly eat them all before they turned. Then, like a bolt of lightning, the idea hit me. Jam. Homemade peach jam. How hard could it be, right? Famous last words, my friend, famous last words. So, armed with my overflowing bag of peaches and a slightly overinflated sense of confidence, I marched home, ready to conquer the world of jam making. My first hurdle, of course, was finding a recipe. Down the rabbit hole of the internet I went. So many recipes, each one claiming to be the best, the easiest, the most foolproof. Who to trust? I finally settled on one that looked reasonably straightforward, with lots of pictures, because, let's be honest, I'm a visual learner. The next step was gathering my equipment. Now, I'm not exactly what you'd call a domestic goddess. My kitchen is functional. Let's just say it's more accustomed to takeout containers than bubbling pots of jam. So, locating all the necessary paraphernalia was an adventure in itself. Turns out I didn't own a canning pot. Who knew such a thing even existed? A frantic trip to the hardware store ensued. I felt like a total newbie, surrounded by all these serious-looking people buying power drills and lumber. Me? I just needed a giant pot to boil jars in. It felt oddly empowering. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. Peaches washed, peeled. Oh, the peeling. So much peeling, and chopped. They sat glistening on my counter, little orange jewels ready for their transformation. I followed the recipe meticulously, measuring sugar and lemon juice with the precision of a brain surgeon. The kitchen filled with the sweet, tangy aroma of simmering peaches, and I started to feel a little proud. Maybe I could do this. Then came the pectin. Now, I'd heard whispers about pectin, the magical ingredient that transforms runny fruit juice into glorious, spreadable jam. But, I hadn't really respected it. I sprinkled it in, gave the pot a stir, and waited for the magic to happen. It didn't. My beautiful peach mixture remained stubbornly liquid. I stirred. I waited. I stirred some more. Nothing. It was like trying to thicken water. My initial confidence began to crumble. Had I messed up? Was my jam destined to remain forever runny? I imagined having to explain to everyone that, yes, I tried to make jam, but it turned out more like peach soup. Just when I was about to give up, I decided to reread the recipe. And that's when I saw it. A tiny, almost insignificant little line. Bring the mixture to a rolling boil before adding the pectin. Oh, my goodness. I had completely skipped that crucial step. So, back to the stove I went. This time, I brought the peaches to a furious, bubbling boil, then carefully whisked in the pectin. And, like magic, the mixture began to thicken. Actual, real-life jam was happening right before my eyes. I did a little happy dance in my kitchen, splattering peach juice on the floor in my excitement. The final hurdle was the canning process. Remember that giant pot I'd bought? It was finally time for its moment of glory. Jars sterilized, lids and rings ready. I carefully ladled the hot jam into the jars, sealed them tight, and lowered them into the boiling water bath. The sound of the bubbling water, the clinking of the jars, the steam rising, it was all so domestic. So unexpectedly satisfying. After what felt like an eternity, the timer finally dinged. I carefully lifted the jars out of the pot, placing them on a towel-covered counter to cool. And then, the moment of truth. As the jars cooled, one by one, they began to make that magical, pop, sound. The sound of a successful seal. The sound of victory. I can't even describe the feeling of accomplishment that washed over me. I had done it. I had made jam. Real, honest to goodness, homemade peach jam. And it wasn't just edible, it was delicious. Sweet, tangy, with just the right amount of that summery peach flavor. Of course, the first jar didn't last long. I spread it on toast, on biscuits. Even ate a spoonful straight from the jar. Don't judge. It was the most delicious jam I had ever tasted, partly because I had made it myself. But the best part? Sharing it. Giving little jars of sunshine to friends and family, seeing their faces light up when they tasted it. That's when I realized it wasn't just about the jam. It was about the process, the learning, the little triumphs, and even the mistakes. It was about creating something beautiful and delicious from simple ingredients, and sharing that joy with others. So, would I do it again? Absolutely. In fact, I've already got my eye on some blackberries at the farmer's market. Blackberry jam, anyone? You know what? Maybe I'll even try making my own pectin next time. Now that would be an adventure. What do you think? Too ambitious? Maybe. But that's half the fun, right? Learning, experimenting, making a glorious, sticky mess in the kitchen. It's all part of the jam-making journey. And, honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Except maybe a slice of toast with some of that blackberry jam I'm planning to make. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching and for staying with me throughout this video. I really appreciate you connecting with me. I hope you found it helpful. If you'd like to stay updated with new content on English speaking and listening every day, I'd love it if you would follow, like, subscribe, and share this video. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, any shopping plans for the weekend? It is always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans is a fantastic way to practice writing and connecting with others in English. See you tomorrow, and remember to take good care of yourselves and keep practicing. Your progress matters.